Is there a risk this is straying into very political territory? Bit too political for a royal prince?
I can't remember a more blatant intervention into world politics by a member of the royal family ever.
We don't have a royal family that's going to sit back and say absolutely nothing. They'll be criticised if they don't say anything. Some people will criticise them for saying something.
What Prince William is saying is not really at all different to what huge percentage of people in this country must be saying tonight.
I am a monarchist. I support the idea of the monarchy, but I am uncomfortable with this. We want to hear what Prince William thinks. We don't. We don't want to hear what he thinks. It doesn't matter what he thinks. He's a figurehead.
His first public comment since Hamas's attacks on October the 7th, the Prince of Wales demanded an end to the fighting in Gaza, saying too many people have been killed. Joining us now is a former royal correspondent of the BBC, no less, the great Michael Cole. Welcome aboard, Mike. Always a pleasure to have you, of course. Now, let's talk about Prince William. I mean, I keep saying, I'm sort of not against what he's said, of course. I think his heart is in the right place and his sentiments are well taken. You know, nobody wants to see any more killing. However, I mean, you've covered the royal beat for a long, long time. I can't remember a more blatant intervention into world politics by a member of the royal family ever. What does he? I think he's overstepped his mark here. It's a diplomatic blunder, I think. What do you think? What's going on in his mind?
Well, good afternoon, Kevin. Good afternoon, Alex. The prince has spoken, and he will be listened to by Netanyahu because in Israel, he has a special status. His great-grandmother, Prince Alice of Greece and Denmark, is designated one of the righteous among nations. That is true aristocracy in Israel because during the Second World War in Athens, she saved the lives of many Jews. And in fact, she is buried on the Mount of Olives, a great honor in Jerusalem, which we have to remind ourselves every now and then means city of peace, as if it ever has. But that is the aspiration. Let us just also remember that in 2018, the British government, in an unprecedented move, sent Prince William as the most senior member of the royal family ever to go on an official visit to Israel and to the West Bank of the Jordan River. And when the atrocities happened, before Israel carried out its reprisals, as Hamas knew it would, the Prince and the Princess of Wales from Kensington Palace did record their profound distress at what had happened, the attacks, the murders, the hostage-taking, and so on. And they have expressed, obviously like right-thinking people, their concern about what we're seeing. But I don't think they're taking sides in this. You can make that case. And you're quite right to say, Kevin, it is unprecedented and maybe it is unwise. But such is the enormity of what's going on there. And we must remember that this was started by Hamas, knowing full well that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth is in Genesis, and knowing full well that Israel would respond, and therefore knowing full well that their people inside Gaza would be the people who would actually be the casualties in this. And Britain, of course, has got a very big role in this, much bigger than people might think, because we exercise the mandate established by the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 until the mandate over Palestine, until the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. And of course, it was the Balfour Declaration which paved the way to a homeland for the Jewish people. Also, the British royal family has many connections with the crowned heads in the Middle East, particularly King Abdullah of Jordan, and also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. So Netanyahu is not listening to many people. He's certainly not listening to Biden. But actually, I think he will listen because it is Prince William.
Is there a risk this is straying into very political territory, a bit too political for a royal prince?
No, I don't think it's controversial in the slightest, and I think you'd have to be quite radicalised on one end or the other to find fault with Prince William here.
There's a lot of people on those sides.
Yes, there are. Well, they need to understand that the monarchy is about unity. It's about bringing people together. As you've said, His Royal Highness has expressed profound concern from both sides here. And this is very much in keeping with his father's decades-long commitment to interfaith dialogue, building bridges, particularly in the Middle East, and tackling religious intolerance. And it's worth noting that as president of the British Red Cross, the King himself had a meeting with 5 humanitarian charities to learn more about the situation in Gaza, at the same time as he was meeting with the chief rabbi and speaking with the president of Israel to give his support, and being unequivocal in condemning the barbarous terrorism of Hamas. And Middle East peace is something that Prince William takes very seriously. He made a 4-day trip to the Middle East, actually becoming the first royal ever to make an official trip to Israel and the West Bank. And there he met with Netanyahu, and he also met with Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. So I think this is something that is very much close to his heart, and would definitely have been taken in consultation, of course, with the government.
And remember, that's the key thing to remember, isn't it? These sort of statements don't happen without government approval. They would have been very careful. I'm going to read what the Kensington Palace spokesperson said. The Prince and Princess were profoundly concerned by events that unfolded in late 2023. So I don't like events. It wasn't personally. And continue to hold all the victims, their family and friends in their hearts and minds. Their Royal Highnesses continue to share in the hope of a better future for all those affected. That's a bit kumbaya for me. But they did condemn Hamas's appalling terrorist attack upon Israel in October, warning that both parties would be stalked by grief, fear and anger as Israel exercises its right of self-defence, but expressed their hopes for a lasting peace in the region. As you say, not much to disagree with there for any right-thinking person. However, I don't think there are that many right-thinking people anymore at the moment. I do worry. A lot of people on both sides will say, this is taking sides, this is taking sides. That is always a risk. But you think they've tiptoed down this route quite carefully?
Sure. Also have to say that, the Western zeitgeist has shifted somewhat over the last few months. It may have been more controversial 2 or 3 months ago, but now when you have Biden and the Australian government and the Canadian government and the New Zealand government all warning Israel about an offensive in Rafah and so forth, I think, in that context, this is less controversial than perhaps it may have been. But also remember that Prince of Wales's advisors are extremely competent. Many come from a government background. His new private secretary has a peacekeeping background. He was private secretary to Lord Ashdown when he was the UN High Representative to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and was also a senior advisor to the former head of MI6. So these people really do understand
They know their stuff. Can I just say, in the last couple of moments, we've got a brand new statement from Prince William alone. He's saying, I remain deeply concerned about the terrible human cost of the conflict in the Middle East since the Hamas terrorist attack on October the 7th. Too many have been killed. I, like so many others, want to see an end to the fighting as soon as possible. There is a desperate need for increased humanitarian support in Gaza. It's critical that aid gets in, and the hostages are released. Sometimes it's only when faced with the sheer scale of human suffering that the importance of permanent peace is brought home. Even in the darkest hour, we must not succumb to the counsel of despair. I continue to cling to the hope that a brighter future could be found, and I refuse to give up on that.
Look, this was quite a bold and powerful statement from Prince William today. Just how unusual is it?
Well, it was bold and powerful, yes, I agree with you. But then he made a bold and powerful statement shortly after the Hamas terrorist attack of October the 7th, almost immediately after his father's spokesman, who talked of the barbarian act committed by the Hamas terrorists on the 7th of October. So it's not unusual, and I think we're living in a different age now, a different monarchy, a monarchy that is prepared to speak. We heard the King, when he was Prince of Wales, make all sorts of pronouncements. A lot of people didn't like it, but a lot of people did like it because he was saying what they were thinking. So Prince William coming out the way he has come out is absolutely right. People will listen. Whether they listen in the Middle East is something else. That is a long, hard hill to climb, and it's not going to be over anytime soon.
Yeah, you make a good point there about the Middle East. They have their own royal families. We sometimes hear from the royal family of Jordan, for example. They're obviously front and centre on these things. The British royal family, I mean, talk to me about the personality of Prince William. How in keeping is this with his character, this type of concern?
I think it's very much in keeping with his character. He slimmed down the amount of, I'm not saying work that he does, but the number of charities. He's focusing on certain charities, certainly not as many as his mother did, not as many as his father used to do, and certainly not as many as the late Queen did. But he's got a nucleus of charities that he's going to focus on. But yes, there are going to be times when world affairs are going to interfere, because what happens in the Middle East is affecting us here. I mean, look what's happening in South Yemen with the shipping. It's got to go around the Cape, which means that the cost of living is going to go up here because commodity goods are going to be more expensive. And so everything that happens in that region affects us here. And we don't have a royal family that's going to sit back and say absolutely nothing. They'll be criticised if they don't say anything. Some people will criticise them for saying something.
Remind our viewers why it is that we don't often see the monarchy wading into political events.
Because they don't want to step into political controversy, Rosanna. Political controversy has to be avoided at all costs. And we now have two members of the royal family, the most senior members of the royal family, the King and the Prince of Wales, who are not afraid to intervene on occasions. But look carefully at what Prince William has said. He calls for an end to the fighting as soon as possible. Well, you'd be hard pushed to find many people who would disagree with that. And he also talks about the terrible human cost of the conflict. And he's let it be known that he's going to see groups of people who are supporters of both sides in the next few weeks. It never bodes well when the royal family enter one side of a controversy or the other, but we have reached a position today where certainly the government, Labour and SNP, whilst not having identical positions, are jolly close to each other. And with the change of the US position at the UN, what Prince William is saying is not really at all different to what a huge percentage of people in this country must be saying tonight.
I want to talk, though, about constitutional monarchy. I want to talk about what you think about a future king talking like this. His father would have been slaughtered if he'd spoken like this 10 years ago.
Certainly, the Queen, for example, never really liked to dip her toe into politics. She quite liked to stay as far back from that as she could. And we've seen a slight shift with King Charles. He's got a bit of a history of getting involved and putting it forward some of his opinions. And now this is again a sort of another shift from William too. I suppose it begs the question about what conversations have been going on behind the scenes. You know, for example, for William to have felt that he had to step forward and make this point now. And certainly it does probably, as you were saying, there's a real desperation across the UK and the wider world about what exactly has been going on in Gaza and this impending ground offensive that we're looking at in Rafah.
Norman, you've been writing about the royals.
Yes.
Were you surprised that we saw this from the Prince of Wales?
Well, he has intervened before in the Middle East, actually, some time ago, when there was a headline in the Daily Express called William the Peacemaker, which was rather overplaying it when he delivered a letter from one person to somebody else. But look, I mean, this is unwise, I think, for the royal family to be involved in these matters. I find myself in a group with Nigel Farage for about the first time in my life. He really should stick to doing other things. And this is a matter which the government should take responsibility for, because that will have been cleared by David Cameron or by the Foreign Office.
It was, yeah. And that's the point. So can we swing it around? Because I'm very much like you. I think a constitutional monarchy, I understand that people will watch this and go, but it's important, he speaks about something awful. Yes, it is, but it then opens up a whole can of whoop-ass, doesn't it, for want of a better phrase. Can I ask you, of course this statement will have been cleared by the Foreign Office, but I'm going to ask you something, I'm going to turn it on its head. Does this suit the government for the Prince of Wales to be speaking out? Do you think they encouraged him to do this?
It does. We've got a complicated political row happening today about different motions and who votes for what.
Let's not talk about that.
But the fact is, I know I've sort of lost the will to live talking about it. But in terms of Prince William, he's sort of above politics. The monarchy is meant to be neutral. Yeah. He's talking more about the humanitarian aspect of this. The Israelis have reacted as well. This spokesman overnight said Israelis, of course, want to see an end to the fighting as soon as possible, and that will be possible once the 134 hostages are released and once the Hamas terror army, threatening to repeat the October 7th atrocities, is dismantled. We appreciate the Prince of Wales's call for Hamas to free the hostages. We also recall with gratitude a statement in October condemning Hamas's terror attacks. So diplomatically, this has actually worked okay.
Yeah.
This is fine. In terms of what
Norman
Prince William
says, don't go any further, William, because that's not the way the monarchy works.
Well, that's true, but also this will have been, you know, every single word will have been poured over in terms of making sure that he's not directly involved in politics, but overall, diplomatically, also, he's the Prince of Wales. He is much more important than any politician, certainly around the world, apart from perhaps the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary.
It's an unusual move to see something so sort of politically forthright from the royals. Why do you think he's done this?
I think he's, again, pursuing his own agenda here, and he's trying to reach out to the politically very emotive millennial generation. And he's trying to outsmart his brother, I suspect. That's a bit of what's going on here. I am a monarchist. I support the idea of the monarchy, but I am uncomfortable with this. And I can see that the wording has been very careful to be neither one side nor the other. But even platitudes can be flammable. And the timing of this stinks to me. First of all, with what's going on at Westminster, for goodness sake, if you're heir to the throne, you don't sound off about a topic that's about to be discussed in Parliament, but also to do with what's going on with the United Nations and with the Israelis. You know, the Israelis, the reason Israel, a tremendous country, survives, it has a policy of deterrent. It frightens people. And it has this policy of corsair et demi. In other words, with you hit us, we'll hit you back 1.5 times as hard. And there's no recognition of that in, first of all, what's going on at Westminster, but also in Prince William's comments. It strikes me as a rather naive, bland statement, which could well backfire on him. The whole point of a monarchy is to be silent. You've got to be as silent as Charlie Chaplin in one of his early films. And doing something like that, he's just trying to say, I'm here, I matter, I don't want the heir to the throne to be doing that.
So why do you think it might backfire?
Because once he's done that, next time there's a difficult political situation,
you think there'll be an expectation
people will
that
say,
he says
why
something
hasn't
again?
the Prince of Wales sounded off? You know, we want to hear what Prince William thinks. We don't. We don't want to hear what he thinks. It doesn't matter what he thinks. He's a figure.
Why do you think he made that statement?
Because, and I'm not saying this means he's wrong or this opinion is wrong, because it's the fashionable opinion. It's what everybody on social media is saying. It's what people around William will be saying. And I think this is something we have to be a little bit wary of with William, as he probably becomes monarch quite soon, is that he has a tendency, because he's so worried about his brother, to want to sort of be, to outwoke Harry, as it were, to be more on the side of fashionable opinion than Harry. And this is a very cynical take, but I only say this because I thought the last line of his statement was ridiculous. I think it's something like, I continue to believe in a brighter future and I refuse to give up on that hope.
He said, even in the darkest hour, we must not succumb to the counsel of despair. I continue to cling to the hope that a brighter future can be found and I refuse to give up on that.
That sounds to me like sort of narcissistic Instagram talk.
The thing...
No one's asking him not to give up on hope.
The thing you've got absolutely right, which won't be popular, and I'm completely with you and I don't care. These are the platitudes. I'm a monarchist, an absolute royalist through and through, because we were brought up, all of us, by the Queen, who didn't get involved, because that's what a constitutional monarchy. I remember Prince Charles, as then, if ever he got involved, he'd be slaughtered. People would say, oh, it's not your position. He can have a conscience, and I absolutely believe that what he said a lot of people will agree with. The problem is, the minute you dip your toe, you then run the risk of forever being dragged into stuff. And whether people like this or not, and you're the third person that said it this morning. Quentin said it, I said it, and you've just said it. The problem is their family is in the spotlight for this breakdown and point scoring and woke agenda. And I just felt I want him to stay aloof.
Well, people like William, so they're not going to like criticism of William. But listen to that statement. You know, I refuse to give up on a brighter hope. No one's saying, William, you must give up on your hope for a brighter future. It's virtue signalling, I'm afraid, to use an overused phrase.
You said it was the fashionable opinion. It's the opinion, you know, by saying too many have been killed. The US hold that opinion. You know, the UK government...
I would say the majority of the world.
Hold that opinion. Is the problem what he said or the fact that he's given his opinion?
I don't think there was any need for him to weigh in. I think what he's doing is appealing to popular opinion, not coming out because...
I'm worried that he's been used by the Foreign Office, who quite patently wrote that speech. And for anybody who thinks it doesn't happen, you're wrong. That will have absolutely, as Quentin said, lock, stock and barrel been cleared by the government. Are they using him to do their work?
Possibly a little bit.
Ask
Lord Cameron again. You should do an interview.
And also,
Lord Cameron, I'd be asking about.
Obviously,
I'd be asking about.
You know, that's speculation. We don't know for sure.
Of course.